Have you ever thought that FM antennas are boring? Yeah, they can be. But Les Kutasi makes them fun and exciting. Les Kutasi works with Kathrein. You may know him from SCALA antennas or CIRA antennas. He's here to talk for a whole hour about antennas that we use in the broadcast business. Chris Tarr is here as well on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's a beautiful day. Oh my goodness, it's gorgeous. We got a lot going on here at the Harnack House at the Temple of Wisdom. Well, kind of. Anyway, welcome in. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm glad that our guest. We'll get to our guest in just a minute. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a fun show. But he's just blown in through the rain. Ladies and gentlemen, let's stand and give a big warm welcome, round of applause for Chris Tarr's hair. Welcome in, Chris. Good to see you.
You know, you are the last person to be talking about anybody's hair. I mean, seriously, where do you get off commenting about my hair? I mean, your hair is the one with the Twitter account. So, your hair has its own zip code, for God's sakes. Because I've seen higher peaks on churches.
Oh, it's actually down a bit today.
Well, it is. It's a little mellow, kind of like your mood today. It's like a mood ring. Kirk, we got to look at Kirk's hair, and we get to see what kind of mood he's in based on how his hair looks.
Well, obviously, you're on top of the world because today your hair is bigger than mine, and you're full of quips.
The higher the hair, the closer to God is what they always say.
That's right. Go. That's right. And you know what I usually say? I'll make sure I say this whenever we have a bald guest. God made a lot of heads, and all the ugly ones He covered with hair.
There you go.
There you go. Chris, it's good to see you. What you just blew into your office a few minutes ago because you were loading equipment or something. Yeah, what's going on?
We have kind of a cool project going on. We have our La Crosse, Wisconsin cluster stations, and we bought them about a year and a half ago, and we're now moving into a brand new facility. It's a really nice new office building, and we're in the process of building some studios there, and also we're going to be trying something different now. We're not going to be using any 950 links. We're going to be doing all IP out of the building. So. One of the first tests I've done is I've run IP now for, I want to say 4 months now for the stations that we have on the Minnesota side of the river. And it's been working great using Ubiquity radios. It's been perfect, not a single glitch. So that's what we're planning on building out at the new facility. So it's all live wire, and we'll be using Rincons for audio transport. So we're pretty excited. And so that was the past couple of days. I was up there kind of getting that finished. We got the rack room done, the TOC done. Got a couple of transmitter things done while I was up there. And then, literally, I think it was 3:55 I walked in the door. So not more than 15 minutes ago, I unloaded the car and walked in the door. So it's been busy, but a good busy.
I am so looking forward to doing a whole show on this project. I guess pictures and maybe some video and a more explanation of what the Rincon radios do. I've heard of those, but I've never used them myself. So looking forward to that.
Sure,
sometime.
Cool.
All right, Chris, you may not know our guest. I have met him at an SBE meeting because he certainly has spoken to a lot of SBE groups about antenna technology. And antennas, sometimes it's just, it's just a bent piece of metal up there on the tower. No, there's a lot to it, especially when you want them to be up there for a long time without trouble. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Les Kutasi. Good afternoon, Les, good to see you. Welcome in.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Chris, for having me. I'm excited about being here and talk to you guys about antennas and talk to you about maintenance and things about how to take care of your antenna, how to take care of your infrastructure that you have. Because I have basically just a little history about myself. Is I've been in this industry since 1979. I started as a machinist at Dielectric, machining parts for components and things like that, and then I was into antenna assembly, production, what they call production control, expediting, project management, customer service, and then sales, and then I moved along to other companies in my history, and now I've been with Kathrein Broadcast, who owns SCALA. And Kathrein is an international broadcast company. They have factories in Romania, Italy, Germany, and of course in Oregon is where we have factories. And and we're family-owned business. Kathrein was started in 1919, so we're over 100 years old.
Wow. I want to hear about that and your role in that. Les, I think I met you at an SBE meeting here in Nashville. You came and talked to our group, and it was a very enjoyable meeting, and that's why I wanted to bring you on this show to give you a wider audience and let our This Week in Radio Tech, our TWiRT audience, hear your story and what you have to say and learn something at the same time today about antennas, all different kinds of antennas. But I got to tell you about what Nautel is doing. They are doing their Transmission Talk Tuesday this coming Tuesday. That's going to be April the 12th, and you need to go sign up for that. So go to nautel.com/webinars, nautel.com/webinars. It's going to be a webinar roundtable on the topic of moving audio, moving people, and surviving Vegas. Now, I'm going to be on the show along with Chuck Kelly and, of course, Jeff Welton. I know I'm talking about moving audio. I don't know what that means, moving people. Now, maybe Chuck knows about that. And surviving Vegas, I got a few tips on surviving Vegas. Most of it involves water and chapstick, because that's pretty much what you need, water and chapstick. But I do want you to go sign up for that. Go to nautel.com/webinars, and you can sign up for all of them that they have scheduled for the month. And there are several of them scheduled for the month, and your invitation to the Nautel users group also in Las Vegas, and it'll be carried, it'll be streamed as well. Nautel.com/webinars, and it's Transmission Talk Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, April 12th, not October, April 12th, with yours truly, Kirk Harnack, and Chuck Kelly with Elenos BE. All right. Thanks a lot, Nautel, for sponsoring the show. Yeah.
That what you were saying didn't go in the direction I thought it was going with the survival guide for Las Vegas. You were like water, and then I was waiting for like water, burner phone, singles, lighter to burn the receipts, the penny in your sock.
Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't go that way, but I was kind of scared there. Where was that headed?
That was just the first year in Vegas. The subsequent 34 years have been a little bit calmer,
a little bit more mellow. Okay,
a little more mellow. Yeah. I burned out on the first trip. Chris, are you going to Vegas?
I am not. I have so much going on. I just can't make it. So as usual, I'll be at the Wisconsin Broadcasters Clinic in the fall.
Good deal. And but Les, are you going to Las Vegas?
Yes, Kathrein will have a booth in Las Vegas. It'll be booth number. It's going to be in the West Hall, the new hall that Vegas has built. It's booth number 3509, W3509. So we'll have a full contingent there of people, and so yeah, we're going to have a presence in Vegas. We're excited about going. The only thing that we're a little bit perturbed about is just the people that are coming out. There was an announcement, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago that NAB said there was 20,000 attendees registered for Vegas, and that is not a good number. That's
less than 20% of what it's been, during non-COVID years, right?
Right. So think about that 20,000. We're thinking like 10 to 15,000 are exhibitors, and maybe 5,000 are attendees. So, but I've talked to a number of groups that have said that they're bringing everybody out. They're bringing their engineering group out. They're bringing, everybody out to make a presence in Vegas, to make the show successful. So that's exciting. And so hopefully the numbers will come up quickly, so we'll see.
I got to believe that, look, for some people are like, okay, we're ready to travel. We're ready to go. Almost don't care if there's a show going on. If they say there's a show, that's great. We're gonna take our people. We're gonna go. We're gonna have some steak dinners. We're gonna treat them right, and we're gonna kind of get back in the swing. Other people, and Chris Tarr, you may have a thought on this. Is about it's a bit of a chicken and egg. I mean, if we go there and we come back with a good report, well, maybe next year we'll be back close to normal. But if people go there and come back like, yeah, you're right, the place was just really empty. I mean, wasn't anybody there? Then it's gonna be really hard in 2023. Chris, what do you think about that notion?
No, I totally agree. And I think too, with COVID and the way we've changed doing business, I think sometimes we're not putting as much of a premium on these face-to-face shows as we used to. I think there's a lot more, hey, let's do a Zoom meeting and show me what you've got, and, do that more of a one-on-one thing, because quite honestly, that's one of the reasons I'm not huge on NAB in the first place. I've gone several times, but, you don't really get a lot of one-on-one time. There's so many people there. And, a lot of times it's more about, making those connections. And that's great. But, really, I like to find out what's new, what's going on, and really sit down and have an at-length discussion about products that can solve some issues that I have. And I think nowadays that's getting done so well with just Zoom and one-on-one things that I think more and more people are kind of going, well, it's kind of a, if you're like me and you're not really big into traveling in the first place, it's kind of a hassle to go, really. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that's going. I think, the days for any industry, the days of these big conventions are probably slowly coming to an end, in my opinion.
Could be. I have. Well, wait and see. And I mean, on the one hand, I'm excited to go. On the other hand, you never look forward to fighting the traffic to the airport and sitting in the airport for an hour and a half, and then flying on the plane. For me, it's about a 4-hour flight there and 3.5 hours back. Oh, and I've got a connection this time. I'm connecting in Denver, so it's 6 hours worth of traveling to get there. So,
yeah, I mean, the great thing is, I do like going, and I like, for example, I'd love to talk about antennas, and, I've got, 50 signals now, and I've got more to come. And so, I have some specific challenges that, I would love to, sit down with you and talk about, and, those sorts of things. But, I just, again, I've got 50 signals. So, half the time I'm worried about what I'm missing, and, back at home, and if are things going okay, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's just
tough.
So hard.
I agree. It's tough for you guys that got feet on the street like you do, Chris. You're the guy you're the chief cook and bottle washer for that place. I mean, you're doing everything. Everybody depends on you for it all. You get a call for anything that breaks down, or how do you do this? How do you do that? And it's tough for you guys to get away that have the responsibility that you do. We, as a supplier, I think conventions, I couldn't wait to get back out face to face. Yeah, traveling is really a pain, and I'm in Maine, so for you, Kirk, 4 or 5 hours to travel, it's an all-day event for me. It's like a 12-hour deal for me to go from here to Vegas. So it's an all-day thing. But Las Vegas is, and I think you might be right, the big conventions might, be dwindled down. But those little conventions, I love the Wisconsin convention. I love that convention. That is a great convention. The Texas Association Broadcast Convention, great convention. I was at, and the thing is the conventions that I've gone through recently, NRB, I was at a few weeks ago, National Religious Broadcasters, it was packed.
Oh, it was interesting.
They had so many people registering that same day that traveled in. They had more people than they could ever imagine they had for that convention. It was unbelievable. And most of the conventions that I've been to have been overwhelmingly well attended. People are antsy to get out, see what's going on, see what's happening. So it's been very good. The conventions that I've been to have been great. Local conventions, the NRB was probably the biggest one I've gone to since COVID, and very, very well attended. So I don't know about NAB, what's going to happen there. I think the international community is not going to participate. The local community, the U.S. marketplace is the only thing that's going to participate. Because I talked to some Canadians today, and none of them are coming to NAB, and they usually are huge attendees. So they're not attending.
Well, it'll be interesting to find out. We'll Les, I'll see you in Las Vegas. We'll compare notes then and compare notes afterwards. Hey, we actually are going to talk about antennas today because Les, if you didn't hear, he's here with Kathrein, and Kathrein has grown in part not only by making great products that are reliable and loved the world over, but also because they've acquired some other companies like SCALA, and is it pronounced SCALA? Is that Italian
SCALA,
FM?
Yes, SCALA.
Okay,
exactly.
So, hey, Les, we got to take a commercial break in a second, but give me a little foretaste here about what we're going to talk about. One thing I'm really interested in the fact that Kathrein started out making automobile antennas. What?
Yeah, we made automobile antennas. They didn't start out that way. They really started out in 1919 making lightning rods for homes and things like lightning rods. Wow. But we had a division that did automobile antennas. We had a division that had wireless antennas. We got a satellite division. We've got a division that does things like Radio Shack. We still have that division. If you go to Radio Shack, those little consumer connectors and consumer kind of things, they have a division like that. So Kathrein is a pretty diverse kind of company. Like I say, it's been in the family for over 100 years. They acquired SCALA back in the late 80s, early 90s. So, SCALA product line out of Oregon. Anton Kathrein, what they call the old man, who died in about 2010, he basically had a great relationship with the owner of SCALA. They really partnered up, and we were making, in Oregon, the wireless antennas for Kathrein for many years up until 2015, and then that antenna business moved to Mexico because of labor costs and all that kinds of things, because it's a marketplace and wireless antennas extremely competitive with Huawei and the Chinese input to the marketplace. But now that division has been sold off to Ericsson. Ericsson's got that. So we still have the satellite division, the broadcast division, and what I call the Radio Shack division. So we still have those divisions as part of the company, and we're doing quite well. The company's doing great. And our expertise, each antenna group, SCALA, Kathrein, SCALA, each all have their little expertise. SCALA, very low power, rugged antennas. They're gold in color, and we kind of call the SCALA antenna the gold standard of the low power kind of receive business. It's a very well maintained, tremendous amount of respect throughout the U.S. I mean, I don't think there aren't that many towers in the U.S. that do not have a SCALA antenna on it.
I know.
I have several of them. I love them.
Yeah.
We go by, as a broadcaster, as an antenna guy, you don't go by a tower. You can't drive by a tower without saying, "Oh, there's one of our antennas. Oh, there's something else there. I know that antenna." And the grandkids and family like, "Papa, stop already. It's like that's enough of that. We don't want to hear that stuff."
So we're going to be right back with more from Les Kutasi and Chris Tarr. And by the way, I think it had to be a bit of a sales job. I'm back in the day when Kathrein went from making lightning rods to making antennas, and I'm sure they had to say something like, "Well, I know, we made the lightning rods, but now we make the antennas, and there's no relationship because the antennas do not get hit by lightning." Can you imagine the PR? Oh, what a PR nightmare! What? We're going to start making what?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's good. I love your German accent too, Kirk. That was good. That was good, buddy.
Our show this week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by my friends over at Broadcast Bionics. They do some amazing things, and here's about a minute and a half to tell you all about it.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These can be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
Talk about some good stuff. Go to bionic.radio, or bionics.co.uk. Check it out. Really appreciate the sponsorship, and you should too. They can really make your radio station sound and look a whole lot better. All right. Thanks a lot, Broadcast Bionics, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tarr is along, and Les Kutasi is here too. He's with the folks at Kathrein, and you might know them better with brand names like SCALA, because that's so popular here in the U.S., and also SCALA FM antennas and combiners. So, Les, maybe we should just start out. In our pre-show, you and I talked about. You might want to talk about a few best practices. Maybe you've seen a lot of antennas go out the door. You've seen a lot of antennas get replaced in your time, and brand new ones from new translators and so forth. What would you like to share with us first of all on this idea of antenna best practices?
Well, I've talked with my colleagues because you and I had this discussion yesterday. I thought, well, let's talk about this. I mean, first of all, when you do have an antenna installed, most of the time, especially on the SCALA side of the business, make sure the installation is done properly. The transmission line, the biggest problem that we have is the transmission line. Most of these antennas are installed with foam cable, not a lot of air cable, a lot of this low power applications. But right. A lot of times the transmission line, if they have any VisWire issues or problems, the transmission line was not installed properly. Either the hangers weren't installed properly and the transmission line starts whipping in place. And those hangers, the metal on them, the stainless metal is fairly thin. So if one or a couple of these hangers become loose and the wind starts picking up, it starts ripping the rest of the hangers apart. And that's usually what happens to foam cable and some of these smaller cables. Is start whipping in the wind. They loosen up from the tower. So you really got to go out there every once in a while just to make sure that the cable is attached to the tower properly, so that the hangers aren't busted or things like that. So and the other problem that you have with foam cable is that sometimes they get moisture. And that has to do with the weatherproofing. If you didn't put the weatherproofing on properly, or the weatherproofing wasn't put on properly by the installers around the connector, the water moisture gets into the weatherproofing. A lot of times you won't see the moisture because power levels are so low, but at times once this transmission line starts filling up and you're in cold temperatures, things will freeze, then you start having problems. So best practice is make sure the line is installed properly. Check it every once in a while with a pair of binoculars or something. Make sure the line's not whipping in the wind. And then make sure that there's no moisture in the cable and the weatherproofing is on. I mean, you can't put too much weatherproofing on connectors and covering them up. It's just no. You can never put too much on it, so to protect the connector. So I think those are important. From the standpoint of air dielectric line that you pressurize, either cable, is just put. A lot of guys use nitrogen. A lot of guys use dry air. I know there's a huge debate that I was involved with years ago about what's the difference between nitrogen and with dry air. Everybody wants to go with nitrogen because that's a lot better than dry air. And I mean, there's a lot of debate going on with this, and I don't think there's ever a conclusion. But you should monitor it. Make sure there's no leaks. I mean, everybody knows, hey, you got a leak. You got to try to fix it. Where's the leak going to happen? You know, especially with some of these lines out in areas where, you know, the biggest problem is guys taking pot shots at your transmission line, you know, shooting a hole in it or whatever. That's how you lose pressure. Again, the weatherproofing is important when you only got 2 connections. So those are important. And the bend radius is important, either on foam or air cable. Make sure that the bend radius is proper based on what the specifications are. Some of these guys try to bend these cables way too far for what they're specified for, and that creates an arc, and then you have a burnup, and you know that's not good for your system. And
hey,
so
I wonder if we could pause there for a second. I want to ask Chris Tarr. Chris is involved in a whole lot of antennas with all the translators and STLs he takes care of. Chris, I got 2 specific questions. What is your preferred wrap or waterproofing method when you take let's say a 1/2 inch or 7/8 coax? You're going to go into an end connector typically on an STL antenna. Do you typically like to use a flexible cable jumper, and how do you tell your tower crew to wrap that thing up so it doesn't get moist?
Well, obviously, you know, I tend to not use jumpers unless I need to because of the loss. But sometimes, you know, as we were just talking about with bend radius, sometimes you have to because you need something, a little bit thinner or a smaller size to get the bend in there. But you know, the standard stuff: butyl, black tape. If it's down on the ground, shrink wrap is always good first to keep things tight. But yeah, I mean, you know, around here especially, you know, we've got freeze thaw cycles, we've got sleet, snow, rain. So, you know, we'll literally, you know, you'll see a 7/8 inch, you know, line with a 1.5 inch bulge coming out of the middle of it where the connectors are.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we've just put so many layers of tape and butyl to really seal that up, because you're right, you can't do enough of that, because those are the places where the water is going to migrate in. And once it's in there, you know, you're done, especially with foam.
You're done.
Because
with foam, you can't get it out. Yeah, that's right.
Right, exactly. I mean, it gets green and it molds, and you're just in trouble at that point.
A story with one situation we had. We had a customer that was on a tower, and they had 2 lines going up. One line was a flex line to their antenna, another line was a flex line to another antenna, and the one was an FM, the one was a low power TV, and so the low power TV was installed afterwards, and then so the FM line burned up. So the guy was blaming the low power TV guy because the FM line burned up. And because he said, you put your line too close to mine and it burned up. Well, as a matter of fact, we sent the tower crew out there, and because, you know, it was our line that we installed, you know, for this low power guy. And I'm thinking, how could that happen? How could a line burn another guy's line up? That doesn't work. So there was a rectangular waveguide. Chris, this is old TV stuff now. This is WR1500 waveguide, 15 inches wide, 7.5 inches the other way. Big stuff, high power. So this waveguide was still going through the tower to feed the TV antenna. Well, when the guy was at the area where this line burned up, he was feeling this heat at his feet. It's like, where is this heat coming from? Well, the waveguide was cracked open, and the flames were shooting out of the waveguide
Poking his
over, burning up the flex line. And, this guy's got this heat on his foot and this burning up the flex line. And so now everybody knew it was the TV guy's fault that says your wave. And the TV guy never saw the Viswar go down because waveguide is so reliable. You could have a hole in the waveguide. It just keeps going. It doesn't matter, but why and waveguide is very low pressure. So for air and things like that, you don't see a lot going on there. So the air just keeps pumping it all the time. So even if it was losing air, so the guy never even realized, the TV guy never even realized he had this gap in the flange in this waveguide where flames were shooting out, burning up the flex cable on the line. So that was a good story. And we were dumbfounded. How could this line burn up? It was crazy. There's another one where from a hardline standpoint, we've got a project right now where the guy's got 40 some odd busted hangers on his hardline. And he's like, why is it? So we haven't been there yet to figure out why the hangers are busted. But it's a Florida station. It's an FM station, 1,600 feet of line. So it's a long line run. So there could be maybe a fixed hanger's not proper. Maybe the tensions on the hangers weren't done properly. But he's got 40 busted hangers on his line, and that's not good. I mean, that's 20% of the hangers that are not holding that line up. So that the fixed hangers are working overtime here to try to fix that, to keep this line up in the air because the spring tensioning is not working properly on those hangers. So there's all kinds of stories out there for what's going on, all the horror stories, and a lot of them have to do with installations. The thing about installations for an antenna, especially a high power antenna, a low power is not so much, but a high power antenna, usually there's a guy at the end of the installation, somebody takes a Viswar check, where how's the installation, how are the connections, do a TDR, check things out, all the connections look good. And so this gives you a really good foundation to do for the future. So if you get a good readout on the Viswar check, everything checks out, everything looks great, check the Viswar again in 2 to 3 years or just to find out, is this Viswar still the same? Sometimes transmitters have some fairly large bandwidths from the standpoint of Viswar, and maybe you were at 10, who knows, 1015, 110, who knows what it was, and maybe the transmitter is not going to see anything or do anything till you're at 1.25 or something like that. So, but you can see if there's any drift in the system if you do a Viswar check in about, let's say, 2 or 3 years after an antenna was installed. The thing about the electrical parameters of an installation, if there's a problem electrically, you usually see that fairly quickly. Like, I give you a story here. This is a good one where this guy installed this top mount antenna, put it up, they ran the line, everything good. Viswar check looked really good. And then the guy puts power to it, the antenna burns up in 5 minutes.
Whoa.
The guy hasn't even come down from the tower yet, and the guy says the antenna's burned up. He radios him, the antenna's burned up. And he says, how did that happen? The Viswar looked good, everything looked good. There was a wrench left in the antenna. Of course, the Viswar didn't see the antenna. The Viswar didn't see the wrench, but when you put power to it, the wrench arced over and burned the system up. So, but the antenna burned up just like that in a few minutes. And
that's where that you're talking about, with these installations, I always have at least me and one other person looking at everything they do. I got called in for a consult for an AM that kept tripping off the air. They couldn't figure out why this AM station wasn't staying on the air. Well, they had just put up 2 STL dishes, and they used the ISO couplers and put it all in. And what was going on was they didn't pay attention to how the wiring came out of the ISO couplers and bonded to the tower. So they had on the input of the ISO coupler, the line kept touching the tower and rubbing, and eventually it rubbed away the jacket, and it arced over and shut the thing off. Yeah. And you could see on both cables there were these these just burn marks, and they had no idea the whole, the relationship between AM and grounding and things like that. It's just a tower crew. They threw the stuff up.
Right.
And nobody said, hey,
Right.
by the way, you've got to make sure that these cables do not come near the tower at all. You isolate the isocoupler, and then on the other side, that can, you're good with that. But anything coming in, so yeah, you see that a lot. And, especially recently with the, as they call the translator invasion with the AMs,
Right.
you get
Right.
a lot of these people who just aren't experienced with that.
No.
Or even, even with, now with AMs and, some people are doing STLs for the translators and things. So there's a whole wash of, then in crews, because of repack, you've got inexperienced crews a lot of times on these things, because they were hired for the repack and stayed on. So yeah, installation is so important, and just check and double check.
I was in the bakery business for a number of years. I owned a bakery, and we always said in the bakery business that bakers could be cooks, but cooks can't be bakers. There's just a thing about it, because cooks have a tendency to throw stuff in. In bakery business, you just can't throw stuff in. The recipe has to be fairly accurate because something's not going to rise, something's going to happen. So in the tower business, I basically taken that same saying and said, wireless guys or broadcast guys could be wireless guys, but wireless guys cannot be broadcast guys. Because it is such a different perspective when you install a broadcast antenna compared to a wireless antenna. There are so many more things that you have to be careful of on a broadcast site than you do on a wireless site. I mean, these sector wireless guys just, they're easy to install. The flex cable's easy to install, all this. But when you install a broadcast, especially like an FM antenna with a branch fed system, things like that, all the phasing cables have to be installed properly. Everything's got to be match marked. These guys, the bays have to be spaced properly. It's all based on the tuning. There's so many more details on a broadcast installation than there is in a wireless installation. So yeah, I've kind of taken that on as, broadcast guys can be wireless guys, but wireless guys cannot be broadcast guys. It just does not work. I've seen it too often that they've just screwed it up.
Les, I want to dovetail on something that you said earlier about, a lot of the problems that you see in broadcast antenna systems are coax and connectors. And I was just thinking while you and Chris were talking, probably over my 40 years of being a broadcast engineer, most of the antenna system failures have actually been coax failures. And a lot of them have been just what you said about hangers coming loose, or in cases where they didn't use proper hangers, they used, twist ties, if they bought some Romex and made some ties.
Yeah.
And look, if the wind is a wicked thing, and it'll get something to vibrating up there for weeks, months, years at a time, and just pull more things off. So in fact, I was just thinking the only SCALA antenna failures I've ever had is when the tower fell down.
Yeah.
And of course, the SCALA antenna got a little beat up in the process.
A little beat up with the process. Right.
And actually, I had a tornado hit a tower in Mississippi, and I called around to some SBE folks here in Nashville before I made my trip down there. Say, hey, does anybody? I saw a picture of our SCALA PR-450 paraflector, and it's pretty well chopped up by the tower falling over, or part of the tower falling over on it and crunching it. Does anybody have any parts or maybe a whole antenna? And a guy here in Nashville said, yeah, I got part of an antenna. You're welcome to borrow it. If it's the parts you need, great. So I went out, I collected up the antenna, and it was the whole reflector part of it, not the feed horn. And but it was like, I don't know, 40 years old. And my antenna was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old. And of course, they fit together like hand and glove.
Perfect.
It just went right together. Didn't matter. They were 40 years apart from each other. Right. Worked just fine. Got us on the air.
The designs haven't changed since the 1960s on these things. I mean, it's the same design, the same stuff. And the people that have been making these, they're in Oregon. And they've been with the company 20, 30 years. Some of them 40 years have been with the company, and they're making the same quality stuff that they made 40 years ago. It's just phenomenal. The expertise that's there, the knowledge that's there of assembling these antennas, and just the design that they have is so robust and so reliable. We're not changing any of these designs. They're so reliable and so robust. There's no reason to change them. They just work, and people are happy with them.
Chris may have too, but occasionally I'd work for an owner that would buy something cheaper than a SCALA PR-450. They'd get something else. And I'd get it in, I'd look at it, I said, well, I'll tell you where they save the money. It's right here at this important point here that keeps you on the air. Do you really want to save money here? And so, Chris, maybe you've had some similar experience in your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only buy SCALAs, so I haven't actually had a situation where I've been burned by that. Because I have 3 of them sitting in boxes right now. But it's a good reminder, and it actually kind of dovetails with everything we've been saying. Even the cheapest owner I've ever run into, I've always said the one thing you've got to spend your money on, transmission system. The antenna, the line, the STL dishes, that sort of thing, because computers crash, you can fix those, studios burn up, you can plug something in, but from the transmitter to the top of the tower, if something there fails, there's no real workarounds to that other than replacement. I mean, so spend a little more money now, and this stuff will last a good long time. I mean, antennas are, I don't mean it to sound like there's not, that they're easy or anything, but they're passive devices. So, all the hard work was done. So, they're designed to last forever. And these time-tested designs, they generally don't break. Once you have them up in the air, as long as there aren't anything external, causing issues, they just work. So spend the money on those, because that it's going to be a lot more resistant to those external forces than a cheaper antenna, and you'll get better performance. I mean, there just is nothing better for reliable microwave link, STL link, than a SCALA antenna. Just like there are all kinds of different, even for like receive and transmit, doing the the SCALA Yagis and that sort of thing.
Right.
Log periodics, they take a beating on those towers, and they still work. So, but you could go cheaper, and, I've seen elements just fall off or, break in half. And, so again, it's so expensive to get people on the tower. Spend the money now and save yourself the headache later on.
We have got to take a quick break, Les. When we come back, Les is going to talk to us a bit about single frequency networks, especially in the TV realm. And I'm curious to hear from Les about some new rules about directional FMs, how the FCC has changed the rules, making things actually a little cheaper and easier for perhaps low power stations or other low power or low budget stations that may need to implement a directional FM antenna. So that is coming up. Plus a little story about Farnsworth Peak in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's coming up. If we can squeeze it all in, we're going to have to be quick about it. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by my friends over at Henry Engineering. Hank Landsberg, he's been on this show a couple times. Hank designs the stuff that you need and want to make your studio building projects go easier. Plus, he makes a great surge protector. It's just absolutely amazing. But this is the Henry Superlight. And kind of like WANBC, you have to say it that way or they won't sell you one. It's the Henry Superlight. This is today's version of the Henry Super Relay. The Super Relay was the thing where you can plug your 110 volt on-air light into, and it would flash it for you or turn it on, and you could also run other things. You could mute your speakers with it or start a cassette deck motor to do your telescoping recording. Well, this Henry Superlight does a lot of the same stuff, but it does it in a low power way. It'll provide you LED current to run the LED on-air tally lights. You might also be able to run the little LED lights that are on your mic arm. It'll run those. And it'll also give you normally opened and normally closed relay outputs. So you can mute those speakers. If you're using a console that doesn't mute the speakers for you, well, then you can use this box to do it. Another cool thing about this is you can connect them with Cat5 cable. Now, they're not Ethernet, no, but they're connected with Cat5 cable. As shown on the screen right now, you see several Henry Superlights kind of daisy-chained together. Well, you can give each Henry Superlight its own little address using a little jumper inside. little header connector, so you can give it an address. And just if you have them all located in the same room, like in a rack room or central wiring area, you can hook them all together and make each one respond with the closure that it's supposed to. So it's easy to interface these things with, you know, the GPIO systems that you'll find in today's audio over IP systems like Axial Livewire. Henry makes a whole range of really cool stuff. It's easy to install. It's rugged. It'll be there for years and years and years. So check that out. Oh. All right, who's talking to me? Oh, I see my watch is talking to me. The Henry Superlight. I'll tell you where you get it. You call my friends at Broadcasters General Store. They will make you a sharp pencil deal on the Henry Superlight or any Henry Engineering products that you need. Check it out at bgs.cc, or, you know, they're really set up for phone calls. I don't know. I'm kind of nostalgic about phone calls. I like to talk to somebody who can tell me, yep, Kirk, you're making the right decision, or, you know, I'd suggest this instead, or those are awfully hard to get hold of. You sure you want to wait 8 weeks? Well, call them at 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700 for Broadcasters General Store. They're in Ocala, Florida, in the Eastern Time Zone. They stay open as late as they can. They'll answer the phone almost any time and get you a Henry Superlight. Thanks a lot to BGS and Hank Landsberg for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Les Kutasi is our guest on the show, and Chris Tarr is with us as well. Les, we got several things to cover here, and we've got not much time to do it. So let's jump into one of those topics that I mentioned. Let's talk about those directional FMs. You were telling me about the FCC rule change that makes it a little easier to establish a directional FM's authenticity, I suppose.
Yeah, they haven't voted on it yet, but there's great software out there right now for kind of modeling a directional FM with software. Mm-hmm. And so that's been done, but then you have to proof it, the software, that, yeah, it's actually going to be the pattern. So you have to set it up on a range or in an anechoic chamber. A lot of these guys do it in a scaled version. So you have to proof it and show the FCC that you've proofed it either on a range or in a anechoic chamber. So the rules are going to be voted on here hopefully soon. That's been advocated by a number of manufacturers and FM users, that to change the rules to just use the software, because the software is so accurate nowadays. So hopefully that'll come up. It'll make it a lot less expensive for directional FMs to get on the air, and they'll get on the air a lot quicker too, with using just software, being able to design the antennas right out of the box pretty fast.
I take it the antennas still have to be mounted on the tower in the method specified by the manufacturer with the with any extra elements in the right places.
The software takes into consideration the tower members, anything that's going in the tower. The software is extremely strong, powerful, that you could see. It takes into consideration all the things that are in the tower that would affect the pattern of the FM antenna. So it's a good way to go. You know, this way of proofing the pattern, you know, this is the 1950s, 1960s stuff. You know, this is 50, 60 years old. And so now with the NCE construction,
non-commercial educational and FM.
Exactly, they're giving a lot of CPs out there for these, and you know, I'd say it's about a 60-40 split right now for omnidirectional and directional split. So about 40% of them are directional, because what they're trying to do is shoehorn a frequency into a marketplace that's probably fairly active already. So the patterns, just these last weeks, we've gotten some NCE people come to us. Can you match this pattern? And I'll tell you, Kirk, those patterns are extremely challenging. They're very challenging.
Well, so it sounds like just as the FCC approved the AM method of moments, the MOM system for AM directionals, sounds like now the FCC is going to move on computer-generated patterns for FM directionals, so they won't have to be on a range.
Yeah, I see that happening. I think that's a good thing for the industry.
Master antenna systems are becoming even more and more popular. Even in my little group of stations, we do have 2 of our FMs combined into a broader band antenna, and we use a little combiner to accomplish that. How's that affecting things over at Kathrein?
Well, I'm glad you said that. It's a great segue here. So our strength at Kathrein and SCALA is broadband antenna systems. The international community, which is where we're really big in. Kathrein's probably the number one antenna company in Europe and probably Northern Africa and some other places in the world. We have a large market share in Canada, and most of the world plays a lot differently than the U.S. In a lot of communities, they tell the broadcaster that everybody's going to be located on this one tower, this one location. Nobody can move from that one location. Everybody's located there. We did a project in Istanbul, Turkey, where we combined 80 FM stations in 4 separate 20-channel combiners into multiple antennas. So they can go from one antenna to the other. There's all kinds of redundancy in that. So it's combining systems and combining stations in TV and FM is our strength. Our antennas, the Germans and the Italians, they do such a great job of designing these antennas. They get right down to the details of the antenna performance, how the antenna is put together, what all the issues are in and out. They go down right to the smallest details, which in my experience in the U.S., a lot of broadcast manufacturers don't go down to the details that these guys do. They just don't. And so when we have a broadband antenna system, we've been, a lot of the low power guys that have used our systems, they're combining, especially in translator markets, they're combining sometimes 6-8 stations in a marketplace. This is all low power though. These guys, especially in the translator market, they could be 100 watts per station, sometimes 20 watts per station, but the antenna performs beautifully. It gets the coverage out there. It's just, they're just very happy with what they've got. So broadband antenna systems is our strength. That's what we do throughout the world, and we could do it in TV and FM, and we do a great job at it. And we've got the only example in the U.S., and you mentioned it, Kurt, earlier, is Farnsworth Peak in Salt Lake City.
Yes, nice segue into that. Let's go for Farnsworth Peak.
Farnsworth Peak, we're combining, I think, 6 TV stations. It could have gone to 8 into a huge master antenna system. And this is the typical antenna system throughout Europe. It's in, large diameter radome, panels inside, all the feed system is inside, and a number of stations are combined. And so these are the typical, and it's on top of some large mountain at, 7,000 or 8,000, 10,000 feet, on top of a mountain. And so the mechanical aspects of this are extremely critical because the Germans design a mechanical stabilization device under the antenna so that there's any kind of movement or whatever. It's like shock absorbers under the antenna to make sure that there's no movement even at low wind speed or whatever the wind speeds are. So to keep the signal constant, so there's no back and forth, especially with digital where you got either you got it or you don't. So the antenna is extremely stable, and the feed system is very well designed. I mean, the way the Germans designed the feed system, they put every feed cable, they line it up, they strap it to the side. It's like a work of art almost. It's like a piece of jewelry. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And so the Farnsworth Peak has been on the air now for probably over 20 years. And then we replaced a number of the panels in the system back about 3 years ago for the repack, because these guys, the panels at the time didn't, they were mostly on the high end back in the day. They only had bandwidths near the high end. So these panels were only on the high end. So they were going on the low end of the frequency now in the channel 20s and the teens where they weren't there before. So they had to change out the panels, replace the feed system, and the structure itself, the infrastructure itself, the fiberglass radome and the infrastructure itself is still there from the original installation back over 25 years ago. So Farnsworth Peak is, like I say, the typical. We only have one Farnsworth Peak in the United States, and we wish we had more so we could sell more antennas. But that's not the way it is here.
We've got a very interesting photo to show just before we take our last quick break. And now don't say what it is. Don't let the cat out of the bag.
Say anything. Yeah.
I'd like for Suncast to show this. Chris Tarr, I don't believe, has seen this. I saw it for a second, but just for a second, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. But there we go. Okay, Chris Tarr, may I have your evaluation of what we are looking at here? And then we'll get Les to tell us more about it.
Yikes on trikes. That looks like a bit of an antenna on top there, and then the ice covering the antenna, the tower structure. I don't know where it is, but man, it's not my backyard.
Well, I just want to say that whatever their heaters they're using on the red part, they should put them on the whole thing.
Right. Excellent heaters on that antenna.
I don't think there's heaters on the antenna.
No, Suncast, pop that back up and let Les tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, this came from one of our Canadian friends, and so the problem that they're having, that's probably one of our super turnstiles on top, and then there's FMs that are around it below that super turnstile. They're having a problem with receive, and so we have to solve a receive issue here. The receive antenna is buried in the ice there somewhere, and it's they're having a problem receiving the signal. So we're going to recommend, we've got a log periodic that's a galvanized log periodic that has a radome over the boom, and we're going to recommend it for them. And there's on the log periodic, the dipoles that come out of it are all reinforced with gussets. So we're going to recommend the log periodic for them to receive the signal so they can feed their FM. It's an FM receive issue that they're having there with this ice buildup there.
Wait, so you're saying the transmission is fine, but they can't? But
yes,
they're
the
having
transmission. The transmission is fine. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
The transmission is fine, but they're having trouble receiving.
As a seasoned broadcast engineer and world traveler, I'm going to recommend that they give that antenna a little vacation time in Florida.
Yeah.
I got your solution. Move it 1,000 miles south.
Right. Exactly. I mean, can you imagine that kind of beating that those antennas take on an annual basis, just covered with snow, the rime ice and all that? I mean, that is just a beating.
Oh my goodness.
That is a beating. So,
my goodness.
Yeah. So we're going to recommend a galvanized hardcore, and these are expensive receive antennas. In the U.S., we really don't sell these that often because nobody really needs it with the climates that we have here. But in that situation, they need something a little bit more rugged, and the Germans have got it. So
we inherited it. I didn't choose it and buy it myself. We bought a translator that came with a beautiful SCALA receive antenna. It's a big honking thing, and it works great. We pick up one of our FMs like a secondary STL. We pick up one of our FMs off the air to retransmit it, and when we do need to use it, it works perfectly. It's been up for years. Haven't had to touch it. Just works.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to take our last quick break. When we come back, either Chris or Les or both of them are going to have a quick tip of the week, but we got to be quick about it because Kirk hasn't done his proper job of staying on time. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by my friends at Angry Audio, home of the headphone disconnector. This is two of them here. Let's see. Let's get one. Here's a headphone disconnector with a female 1/4-inch tip ring sleeve for your headphone to plug into, and then this plugs into your headphone amp. We'll pull out a headphone amp here and plug that in. But what happens when your ding-dong disc jockey gets up and walks away with his headphones on? It just comes right apart. It's held together magnetically with a MagSafe type connector. It only goes back on one way, so hey, that works. You don't reverse your left and right. And Angry Audio is also home of the Studio Hub adapters. Now, if you're not building studios with these, plugging into your AOIP nodes and blades, like from Axia or Wheatstone or whomever, these make life really good. You take this and you plug a little Cat 5 cable into this, and then go over to you're at your Studio Hub jack, which is likely these days to be on the back of an Axia X node, and voila, you've got a connection without having to get the soldering iron out. and you can use whatever length Cat5 you need to haul that audio to or from the X node. They work really, really well, and I just would not build a studio without Studio Hub adapters. And by the way, I want to tell you, be sure you do get the original Studio Hub adapters, because they literally spent years on the tooling and manufacturing to take flexible audio cables and make them run properly into an RJ45 connector. And that really, really does work super well. Of course, so many devices these days come with Studio Hub jacks on them for both audio and for power. Studio Hub not only works for balanced analog audio, it also works for the balanced AES-EBU digital standard, and power can be carried as well on that. So get that stuff from Angry Audio. You need to check that out at angryaudio.com, the headphone disconnector, and then all of the cool products that Angry Audio makes. They, of course, have the Studio Hub line, and they have their own line of products as well at Angry Audio. Stuff to make your studio work super, super well. All right, our show is also brought to you by Max Connect Wireless. Here's Gary Morrill to tell you about it.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
Gary's got one. I've got two. I've got the Cradle Point Max Connect with the Max Connect SIM cards in it, giving me priority data. And I've also got this one from PepWave. They work about the same way, a little different user interfaces inside. But the key is both of these, whichever one you get from Max Connect, they have the SIM card in there that puts you on their network from any of the major carriers. It's a secondary network, but it's prioritized data with a fixed IP address. Works really well. Max Connect Wireless. Check it out at Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny. There's a link in our show notes. MaxConnect.com. Thanks, Josh Bone, and for really doing our industry a huge favor for inventing Max Connect and getting this all worked out. Okay, we're almost at the end of the show. Let's see if Chris Tarr has a tip of the week. He's just got done building studios. Chris, surely you learned something this past week.
I did. Build a time machine, go back 25 years, and buy Apple stock so I can get out of this business.
That's the tip of the week.
That's your tip of the week.
That's the tip. I would go back to what you're talking about with Studio Hub. Buy the original Studio Hub adapters and buy lots of them because every time I go to do one of these projects, I always stock up because you tend to use one more than the other, and then you burn through them and you get ready to try to finish something up, and you're just stuck. And then the other thing is you can use them to create different types of cables, gender changers, all sorts of things. So, get a good assortment of those Studio Hub connectors and keep them with you.
Good idea. Good advice. Les Kutasi, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but can you give us a tip of the week for our viewers and listeners?
Well, we talked a lot about maintenance and things like that. I think if you just walk out to the transmitter site with your binoculars and just look up the tower, just every once in a while, just go up and look at it. So many guys that I know haven't been to the transmitter site, and sometimes it's years or something. I mean, some of these guys that I've talked to don't even know where their transmitter site is. Yeah, it's somewhere west of town, but I don't know where it is. I haven't been able to find it. So especially when you're renting a tower space, you don't go out there because you're renting it. It's not your tower. So if you're renting tower space, it's still your responsibility to look at your line, look at your stuff. Just grab a pair of binoculars, look up the tower, see what things look like. Make sure that you're not going to fall into any problems or anything. And if you do need broadband antennas, stop by and see us at the show in Las Vegas and the West Hall.
And we'll have your contact info in our show notes as well, Les. So folks can contact you there
I've
for
enjoyed
advice
this.
or to get a quote.
We didn't talk about all the subjects we wanted to talk about, especially SFNs and FMSFNs and all those kinds of things. Those are exciting things that are happening in our industry today. So hopefully you'll invite me again and we can talk about those things.
That's the problem when you have me on the show. We talk about everything. But and by the way, my tip would dovetail into yours. You can spend $60 on a quality pair of binoculars, or do like I do and spend $1,200 on a drone and take that up and have a good look at your antennas. Because if there's well, of course, from the ground you can see a piece of coax flapping, but you can see it even better with a drone. So, that's the cool modern way to get that done. But at least binoculars, absolutely. Hey, we got to go. Chris Tarr.
Good thing there, Mr. Rockefeller, whatever. You get your $1,500 drone. You're buying dinner.
It's a write-off. It's a write-off. I've crashed it enough to where I've rebuilt it. It's probably cost me $3,000 by now. Les Kutasi, thank you for being with us. You're the broadcast business developer at Kathrein here in the U.S.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Chris, thanks again. Glad you made it back safely, Chris. Hey, thanks to Suncast, our producer, for This Week in Radio Tech. Another great job. Thank you, sir. And thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, where you'll find at least one other podcast that's amazing. You ought to check it out. All right, we're going to go. We'll see you next week. Next week, we got an amazing guest. He builds a lot of studios. His name is Dave Saplee, and it's about time we had him on the show. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.